Next, I'd like to welcome up Jim with Breach Clarity. He's going to demystify what any data breach means.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your attention. So I'm here to talk about a new solution, and there aren't many fintech things that are truly new, and I can tell you about how challenging it is to launch a product that's truly unprecedented. There are two ongoing epidemics that unfortunately we're all getting used to, but they're interconnected. One largely causes the other, and you're all affected by them at least twice every year. And one is data breaches, and the other is identity theft and fraud. So the average person in this room has been a victim of a data breach, publicly reported one, at least twice in the last year on average. And data breaches, as we know, are the biggest cause of identity theft and fraud in all its major forms and its lesser known forms, like tax refund fraud, various forms of new financial fraud, new financial account fraud like debit, credit, and there's 7 or 8 others in my model. And while you probably are thinking right now of data breaches that you've been in the last year or two, as I'm mentioning this to you, and by the way, after I sold my prior company, Javelin Strategy and Research, located nearby, that I ran for 12 years, I was surprised to find out that I got completely consumed as an expert witness in nearly all of the nation's largest data breaches. I was even deposed all day on Monday in one of the largest ones in the news right now. And from this, I realized that I could create a mission-driven company, which has really been my passion, to protect everybody, and especially the people that are the hardest hit by identity fraud, which is people who are financially marginalized. But everybody is a victim eventually. And my algorithm knows something that no one here knows, and that is if you name any data breach that you've been in the last few years, type it in Breach Clarity's algorithm, and if you want to try it yourself, and if you like to multitask, you can actually go to breachclarity.com and see a very limited version. Just pick the name of any breach from the last few years and type it in the search window. It'll give you some very preliminary beta findings. The algorithm knows some things that you don't know, and my aim is to protect everybody by helping with this. So it tells people, for any data breach on a Richter-like scale, what their risk level is. It's very simple. Just like we're used to a 1 to 10 score that relates to individual risk for earthquakes, and the Saffir-Simpson scale for hurricanes. Why don't we have one for data breaches? Well, now we do, and I've filed lots of patents on it. Number 2, though, and this is where it gets more than eye candy, because let's face it, you can't do much with a Richter scale number or any other number like that. The algorithm is based on looking at the credentials that were exposed in the breach, and because it's kind of like looking at the keys that someone lost and said, well, I can predict what locks can be opened based on knowing what keys got exposed. Those exposed credentials are all publicly reported information. The best source of that is my partner firm, the nonprofit organization funded by the Department of Justice and Federal Trade Commission largely, the Identity Theft Resource Center. I sit on their board. They've reformatted their entire database to my specs. So what are the top risks? That's what it computes. Number 3, what should be done now? We have people in the U.S. largely wasting money on products that actually have some merit, like LifeLock and others. $4 billion. More often than not, they buy it for the wrong reason. There are some values in those products. They're just not buying them for the right reason. So I mentioned data breaches are pervasive. Identity fraud and theft, it's $15 billion on the face of it, not just counting the mitigation cost. Consumers are largely wasting money doing the wrong thing, and institutions are launching great products and services like Wells Fargo Control Tower, very impressive, and they're not using them at any of the banks I'm talking to or credit unions. Everybody is dissatisfied with their adoption level. We're going to drive it higher. Breach Clarity is really simple. It collects no PII. All you need to know is where you're breached. If you don't know that, we're going to be linking to Have I Been Pwned. We just got our Series A. By the way, the audience I'm looking forward to talking to here are people in retail financial services or developers who want to join our team and work nearby in a mission-driven company. You simply enter the name of a breach, and in the future, we're even going to tap into your biller list or your list of merchant payees so we can tell you where you've been breached and outdo those lousy breach notification letters. It's a really simple UI. It always will be, and we'll collect breach records when you log in your bank site. Lastly, you just click on the Breach Clarity tile that we want every retail institution to have, and it's actually quite affordable to most of the solutions we have because it's simply an algorithm that I designed myself with nearly 1,000 elements and a UX. And that's all it is. And it looks just like this behind the bank's firewall or the credit union or other institution. So that's all I have. I'd love to hear your questions or comments.
Perfect. Questions?
What geographies are you focusing on? You talked about the US, but are you looking at this being a source of information outside of the US as well?
Yes, we absolutely want to expand outside the U.S. My dream job is to get this to be successful in the U.S. and then to modify it. And I think that from a researcher's perspective, to me, that's going to be intriguing and very fulfilling work. Because, we had to, if you saw my algorithm, if I was showing a screenshot of it, it would be just columns of credentials like a social security number, full and partial. And you can just, and certain card digits. Well, we have certain card credentials that are or are not used in CVV1 versus 2 and all that in the US that are very different around the world. And we certainly have a different and largely improved version of what we have in the SSN around the world. So to modify that globally is something we've thought through, and we hope that our standard is the standard that is just modified appropriately globally.
What is your go-to-market strategy?
We will always offer the basic score and limited level outputs for free because we believe we need to basically jumpstart the market. But we will, when people get the full version that will be available in January, licensed through our financial providers, and we're talking to most of the large ones and several associations now, they'll get more than 10 times as many outputs. Outputs meaning types of identity theft and fraud. There are 11 major categories, and a lot of those people don't know about, but they add up to billions in fraud every year. And they'll get specific risk action steps, and many of those actually directly link to things institutions offer, like alerts, fraud threshold limits, and a storage of all the breaches that people have been a victim of, because people often forget that, and especially linking to people's bill pay history. So you only get that when you're logged in through somebody who's licensed our software.
Excellent. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.